A dying millionaire refused all treatment and a beautiful doctor risked her career to save him. The hospital room smelled faintly of antiseptic and silence. Machines beeped slowly, almost in rhythm with the labored breaths of the man lying in the bed. His name was Alexander Grant, a self-made millionaire whose wealth stretched from towering skyscrapers to sprawling estates. To the outside world, he was the image of power, control, and unshakable success. But inside this sterile room, he was just a man being bitter and utterly alone. Doctors had offered treatment, surgeries, and medicines. He refused them all. "I've lived my life on my terms," he would snap, his deep voice carrying both pride and pain. "And I'll die on my terms too." No one argued anymore. The nurses whispered about him in the halls. "He's given up," they said. "He doesn't want to fight." But not everyone agreed. Dr. Alina Carter, one of the hospital's youngest yet most brilliant physicians, was assigned to his case. She was known for her compassion as much as for her intelligence. Colleagues admired her, patients trusted her, but with Alexander, she hit a wall. Every attempt she made to explain treatment was met with sharp refusals. He looked at her with cold eyes that seemed to say, "You don't understand my pain." And in some ways, she did single quotes. One night, after another failed attempt to convince him, Alina lingered by his bedside. The room was dim, shadows stretching long across the floor. She watched the man who once commanded boardrooms now struggled to lift a glass of water. Something in her heart ached. "Why are you so determined to die?" she finally asked softly. Alexander opened his eyes, the sharpness dulling for just a moment. "Because there's nothing left to live for," he whispered. "Money couldn't buy me loyalty, friends, or love. My wife left me years ago. My son hasn't spoken to me in a decade. My business partners only waited for me to collapse so they could feast on what I built. You tell me, doctor, why should I fight for a life so empty?" The words hit Alina like a storm. She realized his refusal wasn't about pride or fear, it was about hopelessness. He wasn't afraid of death. He was afraid of living without meaning. For days afterward, Alina wrestled with her conscience. As a doctor, she was bound by rules, policies, and protocols. But as a human being, she couldn't stand by and let a man slip away when she knew he could still be saved in it. Just medically, but emotionally. Saving his body wasn't enough. She needed to save his spirit. So, she made a choice. A dangerous one. One that could risk her career. Instead of more medical lectures, Alina began to visit Alexander, not as a doctor, but as a person. She'd sit by his bed after rounds were over, telling him stories about her childhood, her dreams, and her struggles. She shared about how her family had been poor, how her father worked 3 jobs to put her through school, and how she had almost given up on becoming a doctor until one professor believed in her. At first, Alexander listened in silence, but slowly, his icy shell began to crack. He asked questions. He laughed faintly at her awkward jokes. He began to wait for her visits. One evening, Alina wheeled him to the hospital, rooftop gardener place patients rarely went. The city lights stretched endlessly, glowing like stars that had fallen to earth. Alexander's eyes softened, reflecting the skyline. "It's beautiful," he murmured. "It is," Alina replied. "And so is life, Mr. Grant, even when it feels broken." That night, something shifted. For the first time, Alexander didn't refuse treatment when she brought it up. "I'll think about it," he said. Elena's heart leaped. The battle wasn't easy. Alexander began treatment reluctantly, and there were nights he wanted to quit. The pain was unbearable at times, the weakness humiliating. But every time he faltered, Alina was there, not as a doctor with charts and medicine, but as a friend who believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. "Why are you doing this?" he asked her one night, frustration in his tone. "Why risk your career, your reputation, for me?" "Because," she said firmly, meeting his gaze, "you're more than a diagnosis. You're a human being. And as long as there's breath in your lungs, you have a chance to live, not just exist. Maybe your money didn't give you happiness. Maybe you've lost people, but life isn't over until it's over. You still have time to change, to forgive, to find meaning. I believe that, and I believe in you." Tears glistened in his weary eyes. For the first time in decades, Alexander Grant, the man who conquered industries but lost himself, allowed someone to care for him. Weeks turned into months. Against all odds, Alexander's health began to improve. The man who once lay waiting for death now stood on trembling legs, walking slowly with determination. His recovery became a quiet miracle, but the greater miracle was in his heart. One morning, he asked Alina for a phone. Hands shaking, he dialed a number he hadn't touched in 10 years. When his son's voice answered on the other side, Alexander broke down, sobbing apologies he never thought he'd utter. That call marked the beginning of healing, not just for his body, but for his soul. Months later, Alexander was discharged. He wasn't fully healed, but he was alive in ways he hadn't been in years. Before leaving, he found Elena in her office. "I was wrong," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "Life isn't measured by wealth, but by the lives we touch. He didn't just save me, Dr. Juge. He gave me a reason to live again." He placed an envelope on her desk. Inside was a donation large enough to fund an entire new wing of the hospital for underprivileged patients who couldn't afford care. He wanted others to have the second chance he'd been given. Elena's eyes filled with tears. "You don't owe me anything," she whispered. "I know," Alexander said with a faint smile, "but maybe I owe life something." Closing inspiration. In the end, the story of Alexander Grant wasn't about wealth or medicine. It was about the courage to let someone in when hope seems lost, and the power of compassion to awaken a dying soul. Sometimes, healing isn't just about treating the body, it's about reaching the heart, and that's what one doctor risked everything to prove. Message for viewers: life is fragile, but it's never meaningless. No matter how far we've fallen, no matter how much we've lost, there's always a chance to start again. Sometimes, all it takes is one person who refuses to give up on us. Be that person for someone. Believe in second chances. Believe in life.